it is time for an exclusive conversation between you and the highest ranking marketing executive at one of the world's biggest sponsors. That sponsor, it's Visa. Who do they sponsor?
Everyone.
Pretty much everything, yeah. The FIFA World Cup, the Olympics, the Paralympics, women's UEFA competitions, the NFL. Few companies can match Visa's current sponsorship portfolio. Some questions that I would like you to get to the bottom of, Laura. How is the brand faring? What does the delay to the Tokyo Olympics mean for a worldwide partner?
I'll give it my best shot. Well, I won't answer them. Chris will answer them. So we welcome Chris Curtin, Visa's Chief Brand and Marketing Innovation Officer. Chris, hi, how are you? And thank you for getting up so early for us.
Hello, I'm doing well. Thank you for having me.
Fantastic. So as James said, you guys at Visa work with pretty much, loads and loads of properties. So I want to dig straight into your partner perspective. So how are you looking to work with partners at this particular moment in time as they reimagine sort of the future of sports, I suppose?
Well, two things. It starts with the fact that we're in unprecedented times. We did an analysis within Visa, and we've concluded that somewhere in the neighborhood of 1,100 events that were originally scheduled for 2020 have now either been canceled, postponed, or materially modified into some version into 2021. So you have to start there to state the obvious. The second point is, we're thinking about the contributions that we can make to all of our partners, including many of our sponsorships, as a business, first and foremost, and helping them get back on their feet and helping play our part in making sure that when they are back on their feet and when they open back the doors open again, that they do so with confidence and they do so kind of anchored in principles of making sure that the sport or the property is better as well as safer. And we think at Visa we can play a material role in that, either in the context of contactless payments or touchless payments or experiences, or maybe even a commitment to cashless. It alone won't solve every problem and or concern, but it can make a significant difference. And obviously, once you start kind of having those conversations with partners, you get into flanking topics such as line queuing or clerkless point of sale or in-seat ordering and the like. So our hope is that once we get through COVID-19, we will not only have survived it, but hopefully sports and many of our partners will be the better because of it.
That's great to hear. And to flip it on its head, what are you looking for from your partners at this particular point in time?
Yeah, I think, genuinely, everyone is challenged at the moment on when do they go forward, how do they go forward, and I think the more open conversations that we have with partners across the board, I think the kind of more meaningful the contribution that Visa can make. I think second is all of these properties are looking at one another for best practices and learnings. It used to be that you would only look at other properties within your subcategory, as either peers or competitors, and maybe you would plug and play a couple of best practices here and there. Now it is all eyes are on the Bundesliga, all eyes are on Korean baseball, all eyes are on UFC, all eyes are on golf, just to see what is happening and potentially what can be leveraged going forward. So I think that kind of open mindset about what can be done and how should it be done and the role that partners can play is something that we would truly value.
That's great. And when we spoke last week, you said to me that different doesn't necessarily mean worse. Different could mean better, which I thought was really optimistic. So I wondered how you're applying that in your day-to-day role at Visa.
Well, again, I think that, touchless payment experiences and maybe even a commitment to at points going cashless will ultimately result in a better fan experience. And I would argue a safer fan experience. So I think both of those, if done well and if architected correctly, can contribute to one another. Again, the safer and the better. And I don't think that they need to be mutually exclusive. And I think every one of these properties is in the business of pulling big audiences together, either physically and or digitally. And I think Visa can play a substantial material role in both. And I think by the end of it, we'll hopefully end up in a place where people have confidence to go back to these stadiums and be able to support the teams and properties they have so much passion behind.
And thinking about how marketing campaigns are being approached at the moment, there's obviously a lot more sort of raw digital content being produced from home. Do you think any of that is here to stay post COVID-19?
Well, what do they say? Necessity is the mother of invention. I've been blown away by how good the creative is that we've been able to partner with our lead agency BBDO on developing. When the decision was made to postpone the Olympics, which we were early advocates behind, we decided to reach out to a number of our Olympians with whom we're affiliated. We roughly have 97 Olympians from all over the world. And we asked them to shoot some content from home. That could be an apartment, that could be a sports facility, private sports facility, or it could be one of their homes. And the structure would effectively be, this isn't easy, but this is. And on the this isn't easy side of the fence, it was what they do athletically. And there were just insane things that they were doing at their home that, if I did, I'd be in traction in a hospital somewhere. But the this is easy side of the fence was, washing your hands or social distancing or applying kind of best hygiene practices to, things that you would have delivered to your home. And so, that structure in an iPhone was effectively all they had, and the work that came back was so fantastic, and it looked like it was many months in development, but in fact it was weeks, if not days, under development that produced it.
Well, you've teed that up nicely for me because we've actually got the video, so I'm going to play the video now, and everyone can have a look at what you were just talking about.
Hi, I'm Sky Brown.
Hi, I'm Sean McCall, and this is not easy.
This isn't easy.
But this is easy.
It's great. There's been loads of great content like that. Have you seen any other examples of partners of yours or properties that you think have produced brilliant content during this time?
Well, I think some of the stuff that was done around the NFL draft with the commissioner, was self-effacing and kind of drew some of the elements that fans love about the draft when they were in a physical venue and applied and brought them into the virtual world. But they also did new things with the draft that I thought were really compelling. And again, back to that theme of we can be both better and safer. I think the draft is an example of that point. I think there were components that were developed specifically for the virtual world, again, out of necessity, that I would be surprised if they weren't maintained post-COVID-19. The moments of seeing those players with their families on sofas or in their homes or with kind of multi-generational relatives surrounding them. I personally find that a lot more compelling than the player hugging his agent, and a lot more authentic and a lot more real. And I think parts of those will be part of the creative mix going forward.
Totally agree, and there's been so much great stuff. And what I want to talk about now is Tokyo. The question that everyone's on everyone's mind. It's been postponed. What happens now for you as a major sponsor? What happens next? Do you pick up and drop the campaigns, or do you start again?
No, I think it's going to be a blend. It's going to be a blend of elements that we had been preparing for in the context of 2020, with some fresh effort against 2021. And in all likelihood, it will be a different type of games. And we want to make sure that, our plan operationally is one that fits those games, not, once was configured for the 2020 games. It's an incredibly important market for us, and it's also an incredibly important relationship with IOC. Again, that's one of the reasons we were early advocates for the postponement, because our view was that postponement by at least a year was the best opportunity to preserve the Olympics as the Olympics, and anything less would be really just not what the world has come to expect as the Olympics, nor what the IOC has consistently defined itself by as the standard. So this alongside the fact that this market in Japan is so important to the world economy. It's the third largest economy in the world. It's a culture that's always had a foot in the past and a foot in the future. When the Olympics were in Tokyo for the Summer Games before, the government felt so passionately about making a statement to the world that they in part mandated or encouraged the construction of skyscrapers and also superhighways to make that statement to the world. And if you fast forward now to 2020 with Prime Minister Abe has in part encouraged policies around cashless. And so, he wants the country to go progressively digital and have a component piece of that be cashless. And so, I think these games are really, really important for us as a company, and I think I'm hoping, and I know the IOC is as well, that they'll coincide with the period of time where we're starting to really emerge from COVID-19 in a meaningful and material way, and it can be a beacon for hope, it can be a beacon for optimism, and it can be a beacon for unity for the world.
Thank you. And thinking of the IOC, but not just the IOC, the other properties that you partner with, what do you want from them in terms of being able to give you confidence in sports as a marketing platform going forward?
Yeah, I mean, again, this is conversations that we're having all day long, but just to think of us less as a sponsor and think of us more as a partner. Every other kind of Visa client is doing so, and they're looking at Visa to expose best practices or come up with novel and innovative ideas for how they can get their businesses back up and running. And I would hope and expect every property that's affiliated with Visa, including in the sports world, would do the exact same thing. Don't view us as a sponsor, view us as a partner. On the basis of partnership, I think that there's a lot more value that we can provide, particularly right now, than we can as a sponsor. And so, there's no real value right now for Visa being on a Jumbotron in an empty stadium, but there is value for coming from Visa to help architect best practices about commerce, either in the digital space or the physical space, particularly as those stadiums reopen.
I wanted to ask you a quick question around women's sport. Obviously, you personally and Visa as an organisation have been a great supporter of women's sport, and it had such great momentum. And I fear there's a bit of a lack of confidence that will continue post the pandemic. What can you share to give women's sport a bit of confidence going forward?
Yeah, well, to start with, we're standing behind all of our commitments. Our CEO made a commitment to the employee base of Visa that he wouldn't make any kind of layoffs or restructuring of the employee base throughout the calendar year of 2020 because of COVID-19. And we did a like-for-like commitment to the 97 athletes on Team Visa. And the same kind of fuels and defines our commitment to women's sports, whether that's in the context of UEFA or whether that's in the context of the Team Visa athletes, who the majority of whom are female, or that's in the context of U.S. soccer. And so we have a very strong commitment to it. The vision of our company is for everyone, everywhere, and we take that very seriously. It's core to the DNA of the company, and it's something that our employees authentically expect and would be disappointed if we had relationships that didn't live up to that standard each and every day. So our commitment is there, but our commitment is not just to partner with women athletes or female athletes or women's sports or properties, but to help grow and develop them. And I think that kind of ties back to our view of, a little bit less sponsorship and a little bit more partnership, because at the end of the day, that's the core strength of our company, is to help others grow. Historically, that's been in the context of financial institutions and or retailers, but it can easily apply to relationships and affiliations that we have in the sports world.
And what had you been really excited about around sort of women's sport and the properties and the work that had been being done?
Well, I mean, I self-admit that I got completely caught up in all of the enthusiasm of last summer in France with the Women's World Cup. I mean, I was just so taken by it. My wife and I have 3 daughters, and we took our daughters to see those games, and the raw enthusiasm that was so evident there, and the popularity of just not only the teams but the individuals and the players and the personalities, and how gifted they are as spokespeople for not just the sport, but also frankly a movement and an ideology that's anchored in fairness. It was a gift to me and to our daughters for them to be able to see this and for them to see role models. One thing that we've always prided ourselves on at Visa is that when we ask an athlete to join Team Visa, the athleticism is somewhat taken for granted. What we're really looking for is character. What we're really looking for is, can that person represent our company? And does that person have an interest in our brand and kind of a symmetry with it? And, I just think when, back to last summer, which seems like centuries ago now, and, just the how much that took the world by storm and captivated kind of the heart and mind of the world. And I got to believe, that can happen yet again.
Yeah, I agree. I've got a couple of questions for you here. One's quite a philosophical one. What have you learned about yourself over this time?
Gosh, I probably learned that I'm innately more optimistic than I thought I was. I think at times you can find yourself in situations where you're coming into meetings where there are challenges and there are problems that you're trying to solve, and you're going from meeting to meeting to meeting to meeting in that respect. And I think in the context of the pandemic, both professionally and personally, I probably have found that I have a belief that we're going to get through this, and it's not just kind of a wistful belief. It's also a fuel for me, and I would argue for Visa to make that happen, to effectuate that essentially. And so, I think that has been nice for me personally to see in my colleagues and in the company that I represent, but it's also at times been a fuel for how I act.
That's great. And there's another one here. So what message do you have for rights holders desperate for confidence from partners?
I think part of it is just encouraging everyone to be really transparent about the communication. I just don't think anyone in the world is going to be surprised that there are multiple models that are being developed and multiple approaches that are being developed, and there's going to be pros and cons of each of them, and they're going to be defined by the moment and the window, and not necessarily by a plan that's 6 or 9 months out. But I think communication and being transparent about where things are, when decisions will be made, and what are the elements within the kind of framework for making a decision are things that, rights holders really, everyone in the ecosystem just really, really values. And I think at this point, there's a premium on avoiding surprises, and there's a premium on transparency, because in the absence of it, I think there are a number of different companies, either on the media side and or, from the world that I represent, that are making decisions based on public positions. And but privately, there are conversations that are going on surrounding, well, it could be this or it could be that. And those decisions could be different as a result of where everyone lands. So I can't stress enough just to to state the need and importance of clear communication and transparent communication in this moment.
Thank you, Chris. And a final thought, what are you most excited about in a sports industry post-COVID-19?
Well, I really believe that the world will be better, and I think that sports will be better for it. And I look forward to what that looks like. That's under active development right now. So, I think that's exciting for me. I think if you look at the draft as an example of a product or an asset, if you will, that's going to be improved in all likelihood because of this. That's exciting. I think if you look at the Bundesliga, that is doing a confluence of the physical and the virtual world. Formula E had done that in the past, but it'll be really interesting to see how that comes to life and whether other leagues and properties take the lessons that they've seen from the Bundesliga and apply them in their own respect. So it's gonna unfold and it's gonna develop, and it's gonna be exciting to see it. In all likelihood, we'll have more step change as a result of this over the next 12 to 16 to 18 months than we would have had over 8, 10, 15 years.
Chris, thank you very much. Thank you for your optimism. Keep well, and thanks again for getting up so early for us. All the best.
Yep, no problem. Thank you very much.